My children, I have 3 of them. The oldest was Sally Sue, and our last name then was Smith. And she was born in 1947. And then it was Gary, and he was born 2 years later in 1949. And then several years went by, and I kept wanting more children. I wanted at least 2 more, but probably more than that. And then finally, my husband was against having any more for a while. He thought 2 was enough. But then he finally agreed, well, maybe 1 more would be all right. And so along came Connie, and she was born in 1961. So it was quite a few years after Sally and Gary were born. But then that same year was the year that her dad was killed in a car accident. So she never got to really know him. Sally and Gary took it hard when he died, and I tried to stay strong, but I'm not sure. Sometimes I think it would have been better if I had have cried a lot in front of them, because then they would realize that how hard I really was taking it. But I tried to stay strong for them, and it just, to me, I think I should have tried things a little different then. Well, I like to think when Sally was confirmed at Hope Lutheran, she held Connie, and Connie was baptized that day that she was confirmed. So I always like to think about that. Sally was dressed in a nice white dress for confirmation, and Connie was in her long white gown, and I just thought it was so nice. I'm not sure I'm like either one. I always was told, and I always felt, that I was more like my Aunt Helen, and I sort of resembled her in different ways, I guess. And we always got along so good. She was my favorite aunt. So I think I'd have to say I was more like her. I have, if I remember correctly, I was told it was my mother's engagement bracelet that my dad gave her. And it's a gold bracelet with 2 rubies, 1 on each side. And then in the middle, it had her initials, her name. And it's broke along one side. And I tried to get it fixed at different jewelries, but they said they couldn't fix something like that. I don't know why, but either too old or the way it was made, it just wasn't fixable. I so wish that if I had have realized that I was premature and different things, I wish now when I think of it that I had have talked to my grandma and grandpa and asked them about that early life, that house that we lived in on their farm. I would have liked to understood about that more, and I would have liked to learned all about my birth and what she did to help me live. But she died when I was maybe before I was 10 years old. I can't remember exactly. And my grandpa, I just never saw him that much, and I never talked to him that much that I can remember. And he died when I was, I'm not sure, but I would say probably somewhere in my teenage years, probably. Now, that was on my mother's side. On my father's side, of course, I knew my grandpa, and it was actually my step-grandma, but I knew them because we lived in their house out on 41st and Western. And I remember my grandpa had a little white dog, and that dog was so mean. I was very afraid of that dog. And I can't remember now what his name was, but Grandpa was good to me, I know. He was kind of a gruff person, and I think I wondered if I should be afraid of him. But then he was always good to me, except for that dog. So, and my grandmother, I didn't realize it at the time, but my grandfather had been married earlier, and his wife had died. And then he married this lady. She was from, well, I don't know if she was from Holland, but she was a Dutch lady. She was quite heavy set, but she made the best cinnamon rolls every morning, it seemed like, while we were living there with them. And I just loved them. They were so big and delicious. And she always told me she made them just for me, but she made plenty for the whole family. But later, my sister Lorraine said that she told her the same thing. So I suppose she told Eileen and Lorraine, maybe even my brothers, probably told them all that. But all I know is I thought they were for me, and I thought they were delicious. But then they went to live in Seattle, Washington. I don't know how long we lived out. Probably maybe a couple of years. And then they were gone and we moved. Well, with Sally, I named her Sally Sue, and Merle's grandmother was named Susan. So I think that's where her name kinda came from. With Gary, his middle name is Lee, and that was what my father's name was. So that's where he got his middle name. I don't know where I got Gary. I just liked the name, I think. And with Connie, my mother was Bertha Constance, and I didn't want to make it Constance. I thought that was such a big, hard name. So I just named her Connie, and her middle name is Eileen, after my sister that died in a car accident. So she got the name Connie Eileen. Oh, I felt really special, I think. And when I looked at Sally when she was a baby, I thought she looked just like a doll. Just, her little cheeks to me were shiny, and she was bald. She did not have hair. But a lot of dolls maybe had painted hair on them, but not always painted hair even. Some were kind of more bald. But I just thought she was the prettiest little girl when I first saw her. I was very proud. I do not know. I think maybe the way my parents helped me in early life must have been my background for it, because I don't remember any other special reason. I never took parenting classes or anything like that. And I think probably Merle's mother especially probably helped me too. We all were Lutheran, but my parents, I do not remember them going to church. My grandparents, and when my mother was younger, I'm sure they all went to the Lutheran church at Hudson. But when I was growing up, my mother insisted that my dad give us kids, all a ride downtown to First Lutheran every Sunday. So we always went to Sunday school, but I do not know. My dad maybe didn't want to go. I don't know if he was actually Lutheran, but I know my mother grew up Lutheran. And my dad always took us, whether, I don't know if he cared or not, but he took us every Sunday down to church. And he wouldn't go in. We would go to Sunday school, and he'd come back and pick us up. I have to say, I think my dad was very strict in some ways, and I never would have crossed him. I didn't dare to. But as far as discipline, neither my mother or my dad, I don't remember, but I don't think they disciplined me much. My dad and Lorraine would really get into it. And there was a time Lorraine wouldn't talk to him anymore. There were times when he would drink, and it never dawned on me. I was little. It didn't bother me. But Lorraine would stick up for my mother all the time. And if my dad come home drinking, he may throw a dish across the room or something, and Lorraine would take my mother out of that house immediately. And I remember one time I started crying when he broke a dish, and he felt so bad. He was evidently drunk or drinking, I don't know. And he called me into the bedroom, and he hugged me and sat me on his lap and explained he was so sorry about that, scaring me like that. So what came of it, I don't know. But I know, I'm pretty sure they hardly ever disciplined me. Only one time I remember getting a spanking, and it was summer. My mother and Dad and I were sitting out along the north side of our house when we lived on 29th and Spring, and all the neighbor kids and all my sisters and brothers were out in the front playing games and hollering, and I kept hearing all this noise, and I wanted to know what was going on. But my dad had said no, they must have been playing ball or something where I could get hurt. He said, no, you stay right here by Mom and me. And when they were busy talking to each other, I snuck up around the corner, and boy, he grabbed me and he swatted me. I don't know if it was only once or how many times. I was so surprised. And he explained to me, I don't want you to get hurt. And you were told, stay here. And boy, he sat me down, and I don't think I moved. But that's the only time in my life that I remember that he actually got stern with me. My mom never, I don't think she ever would have. She probably, maybe she never got after any of the kids. I don't know. I probably would think I'd better stay out of it. Let their folks tell them what to do. Oh, I probably would do that. And if I could, I'd sit down and read to them like I did you kids when you were little, and maybe play games. I'm just not able to see good enough anymore, or I would like to have them around me a lot more. I always gave my dad so much credit for keeping our family together after my mother died. I had an aunt and uncle in California that didn't have any children, and they begged my dad to let me go live with them and let them adopt me. And Dad was just, oh, he was mad, I think, about it. He said never would he break up the family. And we were together until my oldest brother went with my grandma and grandpa after he graduated from high school. And then my other brother was with us yet for a few years. And then he worked for, I think it was Montgomery Ward's. They had a store downtown, and he worked there for a year or so, and then was transferred out to the Black Hills to work. And so then he left, and then later Lorraine went to work down on the farm. My uncle Fred's folks, they wanted her to come and help in the house, do the work, help with the cooking and that. So she went there and worked, and so we were really together until my oldest brother graduated, and then the family started little by little breaking up. As far as with my mother, I just always thought she was the best thing. She was quiet, but she worked constantly, and I was very proud of her as a mother for me. It should be Christmas as long as my birthday was on Christmas Eve, but I never remember any special things we planned, or if we even made a lot of it. Although I do know my aunts and uncles a lot of times would come up from Canton and Hudson and spend Christmas Eve with us. But a special one, I think we usually made beds on the floor. Those were good times too. I don't know if it was my very special, because you did it every year. Yeah, we usually spent Christmas together too, Christmas Day. So, yeah, those were good times. Well, the only one I can think of, and it might not be the best, it was once in a while when he would come home evidently from drinking, he would have a cup of coffee, and he would take the saucer from under the cup, pour a little bit of really hot coffee in the saucer, and then he would sit there and he'd blow on it, and he'd say, "Storm coming up." And then he'd blow some more, "Wind blowing hard." And he'd blow some more, and he'd make a story out of it. And then he would soup it up and drink it. And my girlfriends and I, that was when I was a little older and we were living on 14th Street. We would get such a kick out of him and his storytelling about the cup of hot coffee. But he would really make a big deal out of it.